Alright everyone, welcome back into another NBA props video. Gonna be touching on all my favorite prop bets here for this Christmas Day slate. Let's go and get into it. Now in this video, I'm going to go through game by game, showing you guys all the top prop bets for that game. What I'm going to be doing is using a tool that I should have available for you guys on New Year's Day, going through a test trial of it. But I'm going to show you guys the process of this tool, which will kind of give us all the information that we need for that game or for the slate of games that we have. I'm going to skip over the first game, which is going to be the Spurs versus the Knicks. Let's jump on into the second game then, which is going to be Minnesota versus Dallas. And so what I'm doing is I'm just clicking on the team here. We see the projected starting lineup here just to see if there's any differences in terms of that projected starting lineup. For Dallas, what we're going to see is that they're pretty much good to go health-wise here, which is nice. And then looking at Minnesota as well, they're pretty much good to go there as well. Joe Ingles still out. And so what we can see is we can kind of go through team by team if we want. So clicking on Dallas here as well, we can see the projected minutes difference, what we're expected here. So like average versus projection, maybe see who's likely to get an increase in minutes or a decrease in minutes. So because Dallas is pretty healthy here, Spencer Dinwiddie, Marshall, they're all going to get a little bit lower expected minutes than what they've been seeing. Derek Lively actually projected to get about 3.8 more minutes. I'm sure that has to do with the matchup here against Minnesota, who Minnesota tends to run, obviously, bigs, a couple of bigs out there with Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert, so it makes sense why he would get a little bit more run in this game. We look at the point spread in this game. Dallas is going to be favored by about 5.5 points in this game. DraftKings has it a little bit lower, as well as Hard Rock Bet and mybookie.ag. So just interesting there. If you guys want to bet on the lines, we can kind of see what we're looking at here. About 221 is the game total, but I do think it's worth calling out here, guys. Fliff, they have their game total at 220.5, which is certainly interesting there. Whereas some of the other sites like Bally Bet has it closer to 222. So there is a little bit of a middling opportunity there if you guys are trying to bet on the game. But let's go ahead and get into the top prop bets here. What we're going to do is we're looking at Kyrie Irving here for his over fantasy score. This is seemingly one of the better prop bets that we have on the board. And I want to call it the underdog line here. They have their line set at 35.95. So the fact that underdog is a little bit lower, when we look at the average sportsbook line, they're much more in line with the underdog line. We look at his average adjusted. So again, this is a trial run. I'll probably do some sort of tutorial video on this. This is taking his average points scored divided by his average minutes and then just timesing that by his projected minutes. So really not a big difference. So he basically averages 40 fantasy points for PrizePicks. We see the projected line as well, about 38.2. So all good stuff there. Now, the matchup, not exactly the best, but really not too worrisome there as well. If we go ahead and get into Kyrie Irving and kind of his game log here, we can go to that game against Minnesota earlier on in the season, which it was pretty early on in the season. I don't know if we need to take too many things away from that game, but he did have 52 points in that game there. So obviously that's a good thing. Obviously we like to see that. That's encouraging there. So that's going to be one of the better bets. And then guys, let's jump into the Minnesota side of this game here. And so, again, kind of looking at it, the best prop bets that we have are going to be some of these fantasy score prop bets here. Rudy Gobert over points and assists is not terrible, given the matchup here as well. He kind of gets an increase there. So this DVP index projection here, that's taking the matchup and adjusting the matchup for that line. So that's a way to go about attacking there if you guys want to do that. So not a terrible prop bet there. But let's look at Mike Conley and Jaden Daniels here as well, because they are players that are going to get a slight increase in their expected fantasy points here as well. I wish we were getting an underdog line to be able to kind of tell whether or not these are like true edges, but look at the projection data. The projection data likes the over. Look at the average sportsbook line. Obviously, that's what the edge is measured against. 54% likelihood for those bets to hit, so very good stuff there. Now, the thing with Mike Conley is he is someone that has been typically a little bit more hit or miss in terms of his over fantasy score. Same thing is going to be true for Jaden Daniels, but at least recently he's been someone that has been going off, which is nice to see. But let's go ahead and take a peek at what they're able to do in their matchups against Dallas earlier on this year. So we look at Jaden Daniels in that game. He was able to get 24 DK points, which is a little bit different than PrizePicks points, but for the most part, relatively the same. He still got the over in this matchup. So like to see that there. And the thing with Jaden Daniels is for the most part, his minutes are steady unless games are blowouts. Now, it is worth calling out. Dallas is 5.5 point favorites. That could end up happening, which would be a little bit of a concern. But we look at the last game against Dallas. It was a close enough game, basically right on line, right on par with the 5.5 point spread that we have today. And then we look at Mike Conley as well, guys. His minutes have been a little bit sporadic, but again, assuming that this game does stay close, we know that with NBA prop betting, right? A lot of prop bets we can be on a good bet per se, but if the minutes aren't there, they're not going to hit pretty much. And so that's always the concern. But again, 5.5 point spread. Typically, I don't worry about blowouts in that regard there. Looking at guys, Mike Conley barely got the over there. He did have 2 turnovers, but he was able to negate that with some 6 assists there, which is a little bit higher than his norm. We do need him to get closer to the 1.5 blocks and steals, or at least steals there. He is pretty notorious for having multiple steals in a game, and if he's doing that with the PrizePicks scoring, that should be a good bet for us. And so let's go ahead and jump on into the next game. We got Philly versus Boston, a game that is probably going to be ugly, but at least Joel Embiid is going to be active in this game. That is a good thing to see. Eric Gordon expected to play in this game as well, so you get another kind of score in there. Is he going to play that much? Probably not. Jared McCain is still out there, which is somewhat important there. Not overly important, though, but it is noteworthy there. We are seeing some slight differences in this game, so most likely going to be a blowout, 8.5 points or so on average. Worth calling out, Bovada has it at 8. So if you guys like the over, or if you think obviously Boston's going to win by more than that, I kind of do, then you could bet on that site there. And for the most part, the game total is about 221.5 on average. Now, what's interesting here is looking at Paul George and his projected minutes adjustment here. That is worth calling out because he is someone that, one, with Joel Embiid back, like, yeah, you do expect these games to stay closer for longer. That is good. But also with Jared McCain out as well, he is someone that does benefit in terms of his over rebounds, though, with Jared McCain off the court, which is interesting. So with Jared McCain on the court and also with Jared McCain off the court and Embiid on the court, he actually sees a decrease in his point total by 7, but his rebounds go up to 9 on average. So certainly interesting there with some of those points props. And I'll touch on that in just a second, but let's just see the best prop bets that we have for Philly. And it's actually going to be Paul George for over his points. This is another one with Kyrie Irving, like for an example. If you just wanted to bet on Kyrie Irving and Paul George, knowing that we are getting an edge on PrizePicks simply by looking at the underdog line, and especially looking at the underdog line compared to the average sportsbook line, where underdog is much more in line with the PrizePicks line, we could do that. And so Paul George over 31.5 for his fantasy score is a seemingly good prop bet that we have today. Now, I don't think we want to bet on this bet here, but I did want to call out his points line is pretty low at 15.5, right? Just based off of his season average. But again, you look at his per 36 production with Embiid on the court and also McCain off the court, he only averages 12.5 points per 36 in that certain scenario. Now, it's a kind of smaller sample size, but this is a bet that I'm probably staying away from. But it is certainly interesting, all the different data points that we have coming in on this. And obviously, if he's not getting to 15.5 points, then that fantasy score line that we're looking at is not going to be as fruitful. But we look at it, guys, he has been consistently getting there. Now, this is a more difficult matchup against Boston, and again, it could be a blowout, but at least the minutes are still there for him. And the thing with it is he is someone that has still been getting minutes in these games that have been blowouts as well, which is encouraging. Like this game, 27 minutes against Cleveland. That game was a pretty big blowout, don't get me wrong. But then we look at some of these other games. Blowout here against Charlotte in their favor, 40 points. Blowout here against Indy, not in their favor, 35 points. So at least those minutes have still been there a decent amount for him in games that haven't been blowouts. And if the game stays close enough, we might get him getting closer to 37, 40 minutes, which is encouraging there. Then I do want to bring up Maxey as well, because he is someone who does see his points decrease with Embiid on the court and McCain off the court, which was a little bit shocking to me, but he actually sees a dip in his points. Again, very small sample size, minus 10 points. And again, I don't think we need to be going crazy with that, guys. Again, it's a very small sample size, but it is noteworthy. Like, will he get to his average of 25.5 points? I don't really see that happening, which is indeed here why his points line is only at 23. But again, he is someone that it wouldn't be shocking to see that number be maybe potentially a little bit lower there, even though he's projected to get 37 minutes. So certainly an interesting line there, not one that I want to chase, but I did want to call that out to you guys. And then we jump on into Boston side of this. So Derek White is still currently questionable. Same thing with Tatum, same thing with Jrue Holiday. I'm expecting them all to play. This isn't a game that's a big enough blowout to, make me want to believe that one of them are going to miss. So interesting there. Then we look at kind of some of the minutes adjustments. I do agree with this that, it's a Christmas Day slate. These guys, the star players, Porzingis, Jrue Holiday, Boston has a lot of star players, don't get me wrong. They're going to get a little bit more minutes, I think, on Christmas Day. So I'm kind of fine betting on them, being expected to get a little bit more run. But we look at the top prop bets that we are getting in this game, not exactly that many great ones. I don't like this Derek White line where if you adjust it for the matchup, he's probably getting his over. Like, this is a good matchup, and he is someone that, if it does end up being a little bit more of a blowout, could get a little bit more run. Same thing here with Peyton Pritchard. So these are two kind of ones where the average sportsbook line that we're seeing here is obviously a little bit lower than the PrizePicks line, so we want to stay away. Projection day is kind of telling us the opposite for those two. So I'm staying away from those two. Not exactly lock and load bets there. Now, this one with Porzingis here with his fantasy score is somewhat of an interesting one. So we look at the DVP index, which is just, again, taking kind of the point per minute given up for that defense and then adjusting it for Porzingis' projected minutes on the game. That still seems to be a little bit too high. The average sportsbook line would agree with that. So not a lock and load bet by any means, because he is expected to get a little bit of a minutes bump in this game. But if it does end up being a blowout, could see the under hitting, and underdog is a little bit lower there as well. So, an okay bet there, but nothing too crazy there. And now, guys, let's go ahead and jump into Golden State versus the Lakers. I mean, who put together these Christmas Day games? They're ugly. They are all ugly. I know NBA fans are kind of like, it's LeBron, it's the Warriors, but I don't know. I feel like there's more fun teams you could put out there today. But anyways, looking at guys, expected starting lineups for these teams. No shocks there, really. Dennis Schroeder, I guess, for Golden State. He's expected to start. They obviously recently acquired him. I don't have any big takes on that situation. To me, that honestly just makes a lot of the Golden State prop bets that we would potentially be on bets that we're going to stay away from. And so, again, we are seeing AD questionable, Russell questionable, LeBron questionable. I'm expecting these guys all to play. I'm not too worried about that. So it is a little bit shocking that it's only a 4.5 point spread, in some cases 4 point spread in favor of Golden State winning, which kind of is what it is. Obviously, if this game were to end up being a game in which AD, LeBron, or even Russell were to sit, sure, it could change the likelihood of the Golden State Warriors winning, and obviously they would be favored to win by a little bit more. Looking at the game lines, this is why I'm doing the sheet this way, guys. We are seeing Bovada. They have their game total a little bit higher. They're the outlier there. And so you could potentially hit a little bit of a middle there, even with that line, where let's say you're betting the under here. So minus 110 for the under to hit. And then what you could do is go over to my bookie and bet the over at 21.5. Same number that we're getting there. That's an arbitrage bet right there, because the likelihood you're going to profit off of that. So pretty awesome there. But if you look at some of the best bets that we have in this game, guys, for the Lakers, maybe Austin Reeves under 2.5 3-pointers made. That is not exactly one I need to go out of my way to target. LeBron gets a slight adjustment in his under assist here, but not exactly one that I need to go out of my way to target. Let's jump on into Golden State. And again, guys, for the Warriors, I don't really see that much that I need to go in on for this game, and the data is going to agree with me there as well. So the 3-pointers, a little bit lower there. Pods, over 2.5 assists, that's about a 52% likely, but nothing really in the data that tells us we should be going out of our way to target that prop bet. So not that much in that Lakers game, maybe a couple of under 3-pointers lines there, but nothing too crazy. Let's go ahead and jump into Phoenix. So this is one where we are starting to get a questionable player type that could really drastically change the slate. That's going to be with Jamal Murray. He's currently questionable. I'm expecting him to play. He sat on the back end of the back-to-back in his last game. That's why he's questionable, but I do expect him to play. Again, it's Christmas. Kind of expect these guys to get a little bit more run. Aaron Gordon, potentially going to get a little bit more run this game. Game line-wise, nothing too crazy there, guys, in terms of big edges, in terms of outliers in the data. In this game, though, really not getting that many big bet edges at all. Now, here's a bet that I actually wouldn't mind for like just traditional sportsbooks, guys. So looking at it, guys, Jokic is going to get a pretty solid matchup here going against Phoenix. And so we look at his PRA. It is very high at 50.5. But if you adjust it for the matchup, he should be able to get the over. Now, the projection data not exactly agreeing with that. And it is basically a 50-50 split on the Vegas line for him to get this over. But I still think it's a pretty solid edge that we were getting there. Again, he draws a pretty solid matchup, and that's why the data kind of likes the over. Same thing with his assists. Now, we are seeing PrizePicks is currently adjusting it up to 9. But if you want to give him 8.5 on a traditional sportsbook, he does get a slight bump there as well. Let's flip this around and see who gets like the biggest decrease in their edge. Not really much. This is a pretty solid matchup for a bunch of players. Christian Braun to get over 17.5 points might be a little bit too high, but even still, it could end up being a close line there. So where I actually think we're going to get some good value here is going to be with the Phoenix Suns. So we know that Devin Booker still out in this game. Grayson Allen going to be out in this game as well. I think that does lead to us having some edges here. Now, we look at some of the minutes projection adjustments here. Because the game is projected to stay close, Yusuf Nurk could get a slight bump in his minutes, which obviously he is someone that is a point per minute producer. He gets a good matchup against Jokic. As a Bucks fan, I definitely say that. I don't know if you guys have caught the MVP talk early on in the season. A lot of Bucks fans are chirping, how can Jokic, who's a terrible defender, be in the MVP conversation, especially over Giannis? And the Clips are pretty bad, so maybe there's something going on there. Now we look at it. All right, are we getting any edges for Yusuf Nurk in terms of that like DVP projected matchup, and potentially getting more minutes? It would be here with his rebounds. So we see in the PrizePicks line has it at 9. Now the under 9.5 is pretty heavily favored here, so this is about a 50-50 split on PrizePicks. But when you adjust it for the matchup and for his projected minutes, he should be able to get the over. So not a terrible bet there on PrizePicks at 9, where it's likely to be a push. But again, assuming he stays out of foul trouble, not a terrible bet. Let's sort by where we are getting maybe our best potential edges. And I don't really like any of these bets. I want to talk about 2 bets that I actually do like. Now, guys, with this being Christmas Day, this is an interesting line here. Okay, so I expect someone like Kevin Durant to step up, who in the last game against Denver only had 23 points. That's a little bit concerning. But you look at his per 36 production with Devin Booker off the court, he actually averages 33 points per 36. So that's a bump in about 8.6 points per 36 with Devin Booker off the court. And then same thing here with Bradley Beal, who does get an increase as well. We see he got 23 points against Denver in the last game. That's basically right on par with what he averages with Devin Booker off the court. He averages 23.6 points per 36 with Devin Booker off the court. And he is someone where the minutes have been a little bit lower than we would like, honestly. But that hasn't been the case over the past week and a half. Okay, he's been getting closer to those 36 minutes. Was able to get 35 minutes in that game against Denver, even though it ended up being a blowout. And why was it a blowout? Well, Kevin Durant, get going, buddy. Get some shot attempts up. But again, Vegas doesn't really see this game being a big blowout. And so if it does stay close, Kevin Durant's going to be part of the reason as to why. So I don't mind that over points. And just for what it's worth, guys, the average sportsbook line has it closer to about 30.5 on Kevin Durant. So if you guys are betting on another site, just check those lines. It should be, maybe a good edge there. Now, I do want to call it. We see some of this data here. This is not the per 36 data. So if you adjust it for the matchup, it's closer to 25. But again, that is not taken into account Devin Booker being off the court. That's just another data point that we are looking at there. And then Bradley Beal as well. We look at that stuff. It's not really accounting for Devin Booker to be off the court as much so. But again, these are just more of game stack bets where you could bet the over. I'm kind of more on that side, but these are bets where if you're betting them on PrizePicks or Underdog, you would be forcing those in. I want to make that clear. And so, guys, I do just want to jump into the kind of just traditional sportsbook bets that we have today as well. It is a Christmas Day slate. I think we're going to get some discounts. So let's just kind of show you guys the board as it sits right now. Getting plenty of good prop bets. Obviously, this will be updating throughout the day, maybe adjusting for some of those bets on Underdog once they get more fantasy score lines in as well. So just be on the lookout for that. And then just looking at Underdog as it sits right now, are we getting any good prop bets there? I mean, Maxey for under assist potentially. I don't really like many of these, honestly, so probably not going out of my way to target them. If you want to do Joe Mixon to score a touchdown, that's currently the best bet right now. But with that, guys, let's go ahead and jump on in to the bet of the day for today. But first, just a reminder of the promo code that's currently going on. Use the promo code Keep Cashing to get 20% off your first 9 to 5 month membership. So turn that $10 membership into $8 for the first month. All right, guys, so getting into the 9 to 5 bet of the day here. Again, going to be targeting more of those fantasy score prop bets. I do just want to call something out, what was it, 3 days ago now? The fantasy score lines were not good. It was 2 for 6 on the day. And then the following day after that, if you had just bet on the top, I think it was 8 prop bets, only 2 of them had missed, which is kind of how it goes because the fantasy score lines are basically dictated by how the game is projected to go. And for the case 3 days ago, the games were not, they did not go the way that Vegas had thought, in terms of the game staying close. They were blowouts. And then vice versa, the games did go how Vegas had thought 2 days ago. So that is always part of it. I do want to call that out. Obviously, playing time, minutes, that's the biggest key in NBA. And if a game's a blowout, then that's just leading to the minutes not being as predictable. But looking at guys, so for instance, let's say like this game against Philly does end up being a blowout, then obviously Paul George not going to be as likely to get over 31.5 fantasy points. But I am very happy that we are getting some good over fantasy score prop bets, especially on Christmas Day, where I do think players are going to tend to play a little bit better. And so I like the fact that we're getting 2 Kyrie as well. These 2, if you're just looking for like pure edges, like we know that based off the average sportsbook line, these are 2 of the best bets, but also compared to Underdog as well. These are 2 of the bets that were clear outliers there. So I like that there. Mike Conley and Jaden Daniels, just kind of betting on that Dallas game staying close. And then if you guys want to do a 6-slip bet, these are kind of 2 of the other good prop bets that we currently have. For what it's worth, Robert Woods, not exactly sure what we should expect from him snap count wise. Just John Mechie is back tonight. Tank Dell is out though, so really just depends on the look that they're trying to get there. I could see Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, and Robert Woods just splitting the work that Tank Dell would typically get. Okay, so just interesting there. But that's all for today, guys. Good luck with all your bets today. Merry Christmas again. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing.